one of them was with her when she came in to vote.
No, I saw.
Or,
Oh, no.
oh, saw her.
Well, I
too.
know, but
Ah,
I'm thinking,
yeah, she ended up having a fever.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are on air. We'll start in just. Mics are live.
Faith is last. We're starting. I'm starting.
Do you want to pop Faith's in while we start the meeting?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, good evening, everyone.
We have more time at the end of the cost center 2 conversation. We'll add those, or we'll next week. We start at 6 o'clock, and we're going to be going through the rest of the cost centers, gathering questions, doing whatever you need to be more informed about what's in the budget. So that'll be next week, and I'll make sure there's healthy snacks so that you don't have to worry about trying to get your dinner done and in. So I'll make sure there's snacks here for you. And I noticed David, what was the candy you were eating?
peanuts tonight.
Okay, peanuts. So I'll make sure there's peanuts there. So make sure there's healthy. So yesterday when Adam and last meeting, we put questions together. So here are some of the answers, and just for the public awareness, that's why I'm going to read through it, is we asked, there was a question on whether the in-school social worker could generate Maine care revenue. And the answer right now is no, because the position is going to be in regular education position, coded in cost center 5. This does not preclude a special education student from working with the social worker. In order for the social worker to bill, the student must have an IEP, which states the student receives social work services and habits of treatment plan. So right now, it's in cost center 5. When Adam and I were looking at the descriptions of different codes, if we put it in special education, then it has to be for special ed students, and this position allows for a variety of students, any student being able to access it. So I want to make sure you had that. The other question was about Newsella. What's the use of it currently? Right now, 32 middle school teachers are using it and 40 Edward Little High School teachers. And they've accessed over 3,000 articles that are differentiated. Reading levels, it is not offered K-6 right now. It's free 7 through 12, so that will be a further discussion on would that be something that would go K-12? So more discussion on that. How much sub-pay was remaining in FY19? So 20% of all sublines were remaining at the end. There was 63,000 of the 312,000 that was budgeted. Up to date right now, we've spent 154,630, or 47% of the 329,000 that's in the budget. Okay. Why do we use a standard side bus to drive 5 kids to Bangor swimming was a question. And so the request was to transport 22 students. Propane bus was used, which is more fuel efficient, and we're hearing the minibus takes 21, and even then is a little crowded for the students. So that's why the bus was selected.
So the request was put in for 22 students.
Right.
But only 5 students actually showed up to use the bus.
Yes, the request was put in for 22.
Not to split hairs, but
Yeah.
there were 5 kids on the team.
There's
Right.
Whoever put in that request.
Exactly,
Oh, okay.
exactly. So that's what we heard with the request went in. So you're right.
And that may have been students and staff.
Student, right, we don't know the answer. We didn't ask, we didn't research that. The saxophone at 3,000. So you can see why, this was, Scott Annier went back to Bill Buzza, who put the request in, and this was the answer, which is obviously the quality of the saxophone, and that, when you make that investment, the quality of the music that it plays, how long it lasts is important. Rather than you're always replacing it, you'll end up replacing it faster than the return investment of the 3,000. The outsourced printing and binding. So yes, we do our in-house printing with EL, but we also use that money to pay for the paper that's used in those services that EL printing does. And also occasionally we go outside for printing. For example, last year when we were doing the parade, we did these big posters for the float. So I went to, which one? The one across the river? Office Max, I think? No, I don't know. Which one ever? Staples, and they made the beautiful posters. So that would be something that was unplanned, but those funds would be used for that. Okay, so those were the questions that came from our last meeting on Cost Center 1, and that was before you really dove in, so I expect probably there'll be more coming forward. So Ryan, Cost Center 2.
Great. So I put together a presentation here. It's on the screen, but also you have handouts. I'd ask this probably will take me about 20 minutes to get through. So what I'd ask is that if you can hold your questions to the end, and then we can go through them. You can take notes beside the slides that we have. So I'm just going to start with kind of describing special ed. So in order for a student to receive special education services, they must meet eligibility criteria. They must be evaluated, referred, and evaluated by an IEP team. To qualify, if there is a handicapping condition, if there is a learning disability present, or if there is autism present, or anything, a diagnosis, it has to have adverse impact upon a child's education in order to qualify for services. And then do they need specially designed instruction? So it is possible for a student to have a disability, to have adverse impact, but the severity of that disability and its impact upon education may not need specially designed instruction. So that's how you get qualified for special education services. So within those services must be provided in the least restrictive environment, in the LRE. So the least restrictive environment that we can provide is a regular classroom with consultation. So that means a special education teacher or a speech and language pathologist consulting, talking to a teacher about a student. That is the least restrictive. And from there, you can go push in service, right? Deliver service in the classroom for 30 minutes. You can go up to 60 minutes. You can then pull them out into a special education setting or provide speech and language in a speech and language setting. And the more services you receive, the more time you're spending away from your regular education peers, and that becomes less restrictive. So part of our IEP process is at the end, we always have to calculate the percentage that they're with their non-disabled peers. So the more time you spend out of special ed, the more service you receive, right, in terms of maybe related services or specially designed instruction, and that's all based upon this child's disability. And all services in special education must be free and appropriate. So it's free, appropriate public education. We do not require parents to pay. We don't ask them to. There's nothing about the education that we provide in special ed that is seeking any reimbursement or any financial upfront costs from the parent. There are times where we might ask them to, if they have main care, right, we can bill their main care, but we never asked, that's at no cost to the family. And again, all students must have an individual education program in order to receive these services. So some facts and figures. So we have currently 659 special education students within the district. That number, actually it's gone up a little bit. That was the number that we reported on our October 1 enrollment. That's the number that's been used to create our state subsidy. So we are now at roughly, I think it's 673, I believe. I think we're up 18. So that's 18.3% of the population, of our total population, which falls in right kind of fall in line with the state average, I think is between 18 and 19%. So to service all of those students, we contract with or employ 13.5 specialists. So that's occupational therapists, that's physical therapists, speech and language, school psychologists to evaluate our students, BCBA support that we have.
How many of each of those do we have?
We have one PT, physical therapist. We have 3 OTs, 7 speech clinicians, and we contract with 3 school psychologists. And we have 1 district-employed BCBA, Board Certified Behavioral Analyst, BCBA. And then within that, we also have 2 in-house day treatment programs that can bill Maine Care for a variety of BHP services. We can bill for social work services that we provide at RETC/SOS. So looking at our numbers, so this is obviously a pie graph of all of our special education broken out. So the biggest percentage is specific learning disability. That is consistent kind of across the state of Maine. Other health impairment as well. The number of children that we have with autism is growing. It's roughly almost 11% right now. That also, I think the other thing to consider is other health impairment, actually multiple disabilities, I apologize, are when a student has an identification that hits more than one category. So you can have a specific learning disability and ADHD, and if both conditions adversely impact, you'd be identified as multiple disabled with a disability, a specific learning disability, and other health impairment. That goes into multi. So within that 16.2%, you have also a lot of specific learning disability in there, a lot of other health impairment in there. So child development services, that's services till the age of 5. That's a picture of my son 2 years ago when he was 3, putting mascara on his face. That it represents, he's doesn't do that anymore, but and he's now in kindergarten. Okay, so we provide services starting in kindergarten for 5-year-olds. At this time of year, I spend a lot of my time looking at the kids that are going to be coming into our school system next year that have IEPs. So one of the factors that we look at is what are the disabilities, where they're homeschool. So once they reach school age, we have to provide that. So students can come into our school system already identified. So we don't, if they're identified in CDS, once they get to the door, we do not retest them. They're already identified, they're already qualified, we then provide them from there. And then based on where they are in that 3-year evaluation cycle, then we'll pick up their evaluation. So as of today, I know about 30 incoming special education students with IEPs that are coming in, and I know of 15 more in referral. The last 2 years we've been low, around 25 total, so we're gonna almost double that, back to the numbers that we had in 5 or 6 years ago. So how do we meet the need? So what do we do to meet all the special education need within our system? So thinking about obviously we have resource rooms at every school, so special education teachers that can either push into classrooms or pull out of classrooms. We have ed techs that can provide specially designed instruction. These are for students with specific learning disabilities or other disabilities that really minimally impact their participation. We can provide those services. So in addition to that, we have 3 behavioral classrooms at Sherwood Heights Elementary School. Each classroom serves 8 students. It's serviced by 1 teacher and 2 ed techs per classroom. We have 3 developmental classrooms at Fairview, which serve anywhere between 24 and 28 students. Each classroom has a teacher and 2 ed techs. We have a language enrichment classroom at Park Avenue. This is for students that might have a severe speech and language disability that really impacts their progression in the curriculum. We have currently about 10 students in that classroom with an ed tech. We have the newly created Autism program at Walton that currently serves 5 students, and those students receive one-on-one support for their needs. We have Team Achieve, which is the developmental classroom at the middle school, which serves about 12 students at the moment and has 2 ed techs in there as well with a teacher. We have the developmental program at Edward Little, which has a teacher and 3 ed techs and supports about 14 kids at the moment. Then we have RETC SOS, which serves about 16 total of our kids total. And the RETC portion of that, which is the regionalized program, serves 9 students, and SOS currently serves 6 students.
What is RETC?
Yeah, so RETC is the Regional Educational Treatment Center, looking for him, and SOS is the success of all students, or success of students. And I think it's important to note that when you look at the out-of-district numbers, so we have roughly around 82 out-of-district students, we serve more students in our in-district programs than we do in our out-of-district programs. We serve nearly 100 students amongst all of these programs that I just mentioned. This serves nearly 100 that in many other districts, either further up north or other places, would go out-of-district. So I think that's important to know that the district has spent a lot of time, effort, and resources to provide support in the least restrictive environment.
So just to clarify that, SOS is in our general fund, RETC is not. Where you would see that is under tuition. We pay for slots to go, for our students to go to RETC, which services middle school age students. Well, now it's even lower, what grades? Grade 4 to 8, and the SOS is a high school program. So, and that's Edward Little program, although we do allow, like Lewiston students that start in the RETC program, if that school decides that a good place is to stay there and be part of the high school program, they pay us tuition for that. So you won't see RETC in the budget except in our tuition lines.
So in addition to that, we have some Margaret Murphy classrooms here in the district. We have the Bridges program at Fairview. So this is students that have been able to kind of progress out of Margaret Murphy but still need additional support. Again, this serves the disability category typically of autism. And that program's been very successful, so much so that we've had a need to create it at the middle school. So we have that support slotted at the middle school as well. Then we have for students that might be in middle of transitioning into programs or might have some difficulty, we have a system-wide tutor that's located at RETC SOS that provides that support as we look for placements for kids. And then obviously we are RETC SOS, and then we also have our out-of-district placements. So that kind of summarizes all of the supports of the system and how we support our kids from the least restrictive environment all the way through.
Where is I'm sorry, where is RETC?
Lake Street.
They're on, the Lake Street School, okay. All right.
So our cost drivers include salaries, health insurance increases, tuition cost, obviously, and seed. And seed stands for the Maine Care. So we have to seed, the federal portion of Medicaid, which is the 39%. So I'll get into that in a little bit. So Article 2 cost centers. So this includes 1 special ed director, 1 special services coordinator, 8.5 team leaders, 49 special education teachers, 7 speech and language pathologists or clinicians, 1 BCBA, 78 ed techs, and 1.5 secretaries.
I'm going to ask you, right? What is BCBA?
Yeah, board. It's okay.
Did you say it?
I did. It's
Sorry.
fine. It's okay.
Sorry, I
It's
missed it.
board.
I'm trying-
Notes for you. How's
Could
that?
you? Please, thank you.
Board certified behavioral analyst.
Okay. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Sorry.
It is a lot to take
It's a lot.
in.
It's a lot of
Like trying to
information.
get it all in, that's why.
Acronyms are up.
I'm trying to talk
are-
really slow, so I apologize. All right. So other items that are in the budget as well: out-of-district tuition, contracted services, the OT and the PT, general bid instructional supplies, legal services, again, the seed, and association memberships. So in terms of our placements, we currently have that we pay for students in 9 different special purpose private schools, which are private schools that we then pay tuition for students. And those costs can range anywhere between almost $39,000 per student to $87,000. And depending, that's what we currently have the range. It can go more depending on the need of the student. There are times when we have reached greater than $100,000.
Those day treatment and residential, or is there?
Just day treatment.
Those are just day treatment.
Just day treatment, yeah. Yeah, when I was in New Hampshire, school districts were responsible for pay for residential. And my very first IEP meeting, actually, thank you for my former director for setting me up, was a placement for $365,000. So, depends on the needs. So the tuition, and the thing is, so the tuition rates are given to us in September of every year. The state, they work with the state, they determine the amount, and then they can back bill it in July. So it's hard for me at this time of year to say, okay, I can't definitively come to you and say, this is what the rate is for July, because I won't know that till September, even though our association has advocated for a very long time to try to get these rates earlier in the year to help us with budgeting, but that just never happens. So again, they can back bill. So students who move into Auburn and attend special purpose private schools, we are obligated to continue their placement until the IEP team can meet and determine the level of need. So if I have like for example, just today, this happens all the time, just today I got an email saying that we're gonna have 2 students coming in out of district placements, coming from another district that's close by in mid-April. So I will have to honor those placements, look at the needs, and determine what's appropriate. And I'll talk a little bit about how that plays in. So we currently have 64 kids that we pay for that in and out of district placements to 9 different special purpose private schools. And then we also responsible for case management, the education for 17 state agency clients. So a state agency client is a student that is living in Auburn, that's either in foster care or has been placed in a group home for whatever reason in Auburn. Then we are responsible to provide FAPE for their education, but we are not responsible for their tuition costs. The state is responsible, but we are responsible for the day-to-day administering of that IEP. So comparing from year to year, so this time last year when I came into the presentation, we had 53 out-of-district kids at the time. Our budget amount that I came forward was almost 1.5 million for the elementary. Secondary was just a little over $500,000, and we funded it at 82% attendance rate. So when we look at, so when you think of the overages, right, it's like it's a lot of money, and I always compare it, I take the averages of which students attend, and we budgeted and we came in a little bit lower than what they were typically attending. So you'll see this year we have 64 out-of-district placement kids. So how I got to that number is since September 1, I've had 6 kids move out, I've had 4 kids move in, and I've had to place 9 kids since September 1 into special purpose private schools. And a lot of those placements is reflected because of the shortage of need. So we might have some kids coming in from Lewiston that were in their McMahon behavior program. Our staffing, we were short-staffed at the beginning of the year. All of the local districts are short-staffed. Tried our best to meet the need, working with Connections for Kids in other avenues. But if I'm full in my BI program, I'm obligated to provide them an education, and I had to move them into placements. And there's a lot of that's happened this year. So that's how I got to 64. So right now we've budgeted almost 1.8 million and a little over $500,000, and we're funding it at 90%. So when I came to Katie and Adam, I had done all the attendance numbers for this year. So when I had my budget meeting, we had calculated on that day that our students were attending school 90% of the time. Therefore, we're funding it at 90%.
Per diem?
It's yeah, so they can only bill for the days that they attend. So that's why we factor in the percentage. I would love to come in fully fund it. I tried to do that. I mean, the reality is it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, and so I take those attendance rates. So when I come to the budget meeting, I'm prepared, and we're at 90% right now attendance rate overall. And again, our state agency clients went down by 1. So where expenditures fall, so tuition, main care, seed, contracted services, transportation, and staffing. Those are kind of the big drivers for us. So I talked a little bit about this, our main care seed. This is a big portion of what we do here. So again, like I said, for students that have related services in their IEP and their parents have main care, we can seek their permission to seek reimbursement to main care for those costs. And we have to cede the federal portion of that. So that's always the first 39%. So, and they pick up 61%. So, for example, if a child gets billed $100 a day, we got to pay the first 39, and they bill us quarterly, and we don't know when those are coming in. So, right now we're running over budget. Like we're on track to be spending over about $1 million. That's what we're on track to spend. So that's why in the budget's reflected that we are on track to, we budgeted $1 million, 800,000 for secondary, 800,000 for elementary, 200,000 for secondary. And then, the cost can range up to $0 to $150 a day. This can add an additional $30,000 per the child. And if you're at a placement where the child doesn't have a main care seed, then the district is responsible for that entire cost. So that's when I said it could be anywhere between, $39,000 per child to be 87. I've seen, even here, I've seen the number hit over 100 per kid. It really depends. So seed comparison. So last year we budgeted 882,000 and change, and almost 200,000 for secondary. Again, we're looking to overexpend that by 200,000. So this year we've upped it to 800 and 200. So in addition to that, we have a local entitlement grant called the IDA grant that has additional things. So really, my budget that I present to Katie and Adam, and I'm talking to you guys about, really is salaries out of district, right? It's seed, and that's pretty much it. So all of our instructional supplies, the majority of our instructional supplies, the paying of our school psychologists, the tutors that we have in our kindergarten classrooms, the professional development, all that stuff comes out of the grant. In addition to, get ready for this, $560,000 in out of district. So then we pay an additional 500 and change. So over half the grant is taken up by out of district cost as well. So we always use those monies first before we start hitting the local budget. So in terms of our cost center totals, our total is $11,990,515. That's a 13.14% increase, or 1.3, almost 1.4 million. So if you just look at the increases to maintain current staffing, you're still at 450,901.
Over what you had before.
Right.
Right.
So, any questions?
I'm kind of afraid to ask a question, but I'm going to ask
No, but Pam, don't be afraid to
Because I
ask
just-
anything, because you know what? Somebody else might be thinking it.
And there's so much
And
that
so-
I
and
Yeah,
it's confusing.
that's
I just want to
fine.
understand, when you say that out of district, at first I was understanding it that these kids were coming from, let's say, Lewiston to here, but, or are our kids going to somewhere else? Like,
Right.
what is that?
That's a great
So
question.
name the nine if you can.
So now out of district is it's a school that's not part of a public school. So it's its own entity, right? It's its own business or its own nonprofit. They serve a specific population of students. So Margaret Murphy is known for working with kids with severe autism. So if we have students that we can't provide support, or their needs are greater than what our public school can provide, right? And the LRE, the least restrictive environment, think of it as a ladder.
Yeah.
If it's kind of exceeded our ability to educate them, we still have to provide that education, but then we pay tuition
Okay.
for somebody else to educate them. So we have students currently at Glickman Academy, which is a Spurwink-owned school in Portland. We have students that are at Spurwink in Lewiston. Right? We have students dispersed at all of the campuses at Margaret Murphy Center for Children. We have students at ALTC, the Agriskondon Learning Center, which is here. It's the old Auburn Baptist Church they purchased. We have students at the Renaissance School, which is at the Sacred Heart. We have students at the Collaborative School, which is in Gray, New Gloucester. We have students at the Real School, which is now run by Brunswick School Department. We have about 9 different students. And in addition to that, we have a state agency client that's residentially placed out of state, that the state pays for, that we still have to case manage. So we cover about, Laura Shaw, Special Services Coordinator, she oversees all of that. So her 82 kids that she sees, that's a full-time job. She's doing it every single day, 8 o'clock in the morning till 4:30, and tracking those kids and working with those teams and providing those services.
So there's 82 kids that are out of district.
82 out-of-district kids, 64 that we pay for, in addition to the 100 that we already serve in our own programs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know if this is a budget thing or not, and I'm just curious, but the programs that are in like Portland and are far away, how does that travel time take away from their education? That would just be kind of classroom hours. Like if they were closer, they'd be able to get more time in a classroom, but if they're in the middle of transportation, 45 minutes there, 45 minutes back during their day, does that extend their day, or?
That's a great question. It doesn't. So if the school starts at 8:30, we get them there at 8:30. And so it's not impeding their day at all. And I really have to tip our hats to the transportation department. They do a great job when I look at other districts that kind of serve other communities. They do a great job on limiting that travel time really to an hour, and which is quite the feat. So my hat's off to Billy and his team and Sheila for coordinating that. It's quite remarkable, actually, to be honest.
And so,
go ahead.
sorry, and so all of that transportation comes out of this budget too? Or is that coming out of the transportation budget?
Transportation budget, correct.
Should that be coming out of this budget because it's a special ed transportation?
So it has its own unique coding that identifies it as special ed, but per the DOE coding, it falls under the Transportation Cost Center. So we are able to track it
Okay.
uniquely. You'll see that.
So it's a DOE thing, it's not something that we do? Like, we have to do it that way?
Correct.
Okay.
All of the coding is mandated. It's actually a federal chart of accounts, and we have to use those as passed on to us by the Maine Department of Ed.
Okay, thank you.
Faith, go ahead.
No, Faith?
Go ahead, Katie.
No, go ahead. I was going to go over the summary, but go ahead, keep
Okay, I
asking.
just had a question about, so you said 17 students we have right now that their tuition's paid by the state.
Correct.
But we manage their IEP.
Correct.
Who's involved and what does that entail as a budget purpose for managing their IEP? Like, is that just you or are there other parties involved? Because they're obviously going to out-of-district tuition, which is paid for by the state. But I'm just wondering what monies or what people have to manage that IEP.
Right, so Laura would work with that IEP team in the same way that she would work with them if we paid for them.
So, okay, so same thing.
It's the same
Okay, so
process.
there's nothing
yep.
different.
And actually, we can also bill the state for administrative time that takes.
Okay.
So every month, she makes a calculation. We also, if we have to, like, let's say, the thing that we do seek reimbursement for would be transportation. So we log all that information, and if we have state agency clients that are in our regular public schools, right, that receive support, we can capture those costs. So every month, we reach out to our teams and say, okay, we have a list of all the kids that we have for state agency clients. Not just that Laura.
I was going to say, I want you to meet Laura Shaw. I mean, she does a lot of excellent work with our out-of-district. She goes to every single meeting. She is always evaluating whether a student can come in back to our programming. So if you want to talk about what your role is, Laura?
Yeah, well, just as Ryan said, so I have 82 kids on my caseload, and what my role is I have to do all of the state paperwork for each student in every meeting that I go to. For example, today I had 3 triennial meetings, so evaluation meetings. They were reevaluated, and it will probably take me at least 2 days to write all that up. Some of that is reimbursable. If it's a state agency client, I can log my time and get reimbursed. Yeah, I mean, with 82 students who probably have between 2 and 6 meetings a year, it's quite busy, and there's not a lot of extra time. I was going to say, so yeah, it's setting up transportation, and at every meeting, I am asking the question, is this student ready to return to public school? So I'm very mindful of the cost that it does take for these students to be in outplaced schools. And not only, legally, we're supposed to annually look at placement. We really are always, I'm really always asking the question, how can we get this student to public school, even if it's starting with, like I have one student who has some fairly significant needs, who is trying out Mark Stubbs' program at the high school. And it's literally, she goes to breakfast and morning meeting. So we're doing the absolute best we can to have these students with their non-disabled peers. But I can tell you that the students, when a student is there, they're fairly significantly challenged in a variety of ways, whether it's physically, mentally, communication-wise, all of the above. They're pretty challenged. It does seem like a high number, but they're fairly challenged. And we do have a number of residential programs here in Auburn that are run through the Spurwink organization and the Beckett organization. There's one out in South Auburn and then one in North Auburn, actually. So those students, when they reside there, their hours, we don't pay for them. They are state agency clients, but there's a lot of work around programming for them. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of my job in a nutshell, so.
I think it's important too that, she's a gatekeeper. So in terms of the services, if there's a sense that there are too many services being recommended or that it may not necessary, she holds them accountable to the IEP and what's being said, and whether those needs, and always makes those questions. So I try to act as the gatekeeper on this end. When kids go out, I always ask my team leaders that they always know the questions I'm going to ask them. Do we have the data? Do we have the support before we head out? The other thing I think is important to note that we are the 5th largest school district in the state of Maine, and that Lewiston has an out-of-district case manager, so does Portland, so does Biddeford. A lot of the districts that are this size have the position support in order to support that, because it is quite the job. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. You can stay here in case there's more questions.
Sorry. I did just want to thank you because you made a really good point about the making sure that it was safe and appropriate for the children to come back from a private school, because that just goes to show like your commitment to the safety of the students and the staff. So thank you.
Ryan, are any of the positions in here under special ed new positions, or are they all positions that are being maintained?
Yep, great question. So there are 2 new positions. There are 2 ed tech positions for the autism program at Walton Elementary School. The 2 ed tech 2s.
If you go to your first tab in your book, and go through Cost Center 1, Cost Center 2, we've listed, so it looks like this. You're looking for this page right here. It's in under the first tab. We tried to summarize like we did last time, so you were like, for that very reason, Karen, you're not going, okay, what am I looking for? Has everybody found it?
Oh, right here, okay.
It's right in the very,
Yeah, it's the very first tab. Very first tab.
Okay.
So I'm in the process of doing my observations for students coming in from CDS. So I know there are students that will fit into that program. So if we didn't have that program, we would be probably looking to move to out-of-district placements, which is that's one of the reasons why we started it last year. Is that without the program, we would have had I'd be coming to you today with 68, not 64.
So you can see in the summary, there's 2 new positions at $60,898. There was a position move that I talked about last time about shifting one of the unfilled positions at the middle school into covering the current Ed Tech 3's role, which is to make sure there's supervision in classrooms during using the tool machineries, the sewing machines, things like that, so that teacher had an extra person in their classroom. So that's why that Ed Tech 2 position was moved into the general fund, so there's a reduction there. And then you'll see that the increase to just maintain our current staffing due to salary increases and the benefits is $450,901. On the second page is non-staff items that you'll notice. The first one is the sub-salary line. So just like you saw sub-salary lines in regular instruction, you see it here in special education. And as Adam explained, he looked at what is the overall actual usage, and remember the increase in our cost for subs. So there was a reduction there of $13,000. Then we have BHP services, and that is services that a student who needs an Ed Tech 2 to help manage behaviors and so forth in the classroom. We're anticipating an increase of $2,000 there. The main care seed, which Ryan explained, this year we're going to be under budget for that. Well, we're going to be over budget. We under budgeted. So that's increased to $124,000. And then you'll see occupational therapy, district service that reflects needs. So looking at current and what is anticipated for next year for student needs, those why they're increased there. Same with RETC programming. We buy 6 slots. We have 9 students in the program, so we have to make sure we have that covered. And then you'll see the big one, which is the shift from 82% attendance to 90% attendance at $773,000. And then there's supplies, and then the rental for the Y. You know, if the Y hasn't increased in their rental, we want to make sure we have money budgeted there. So that's why that cost center is up $911,623. So we'll have to get in more discussion around, are we going to be at 90% attendance rate? Are we going to stay there? So those are the conversations that will be coming.
So Ryan, the two autism program ed techs, so if you didn't have those, you'd have to do out of district.
Correct.
Right? And that would cost, what would be the cost difference between the 60 grand to out of district?
So whatever their costs are total, I think it's around 30,000 per ed tech. And so let's say they went to Margaret Murphy Center for Children, $55,000 a year. If they didn't have Maine care, anywhere between 87 to 100,000.
Okay. So this is more fiscally responsible to do it
Correct.
this way than to get them out of district?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We have 5 kids
We
the first
currently
year of the
have-
program?
yes,
And what do
and-
we predict for next year? Is it going to
For
be 5
8.
kids? For 8?
Yeah, budget
Okay.
for 8. I think the size of that classroom, I'm not sure you can go more than 8.
Right, but
But
increasing and it's...
yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Ryan, when I look back at cost center 1, and it says the total salary and benefits to maintain current staffing, and we've got $745,000 there, is your number of $450,000 included in that, or is this in addition to? So
In
cost-
Addition to.
In addition to, so just to maintain current staffing in cost center 1, we've got $745,000, and then in yours to maintain current staffing is an increase of $450,000. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood that. Okay.
Go ahead, Faith.
So I know you said, do we ever bill private insurance? I know you said we bill Maine Care, Medicare, and I know CDS will give you the option, if, I understand it's before kindergarten, that I know my child received services and they said, are you okay with us billing private insurance? And that's left up, you can say no, but is that, are we able to bill private insurance if the parent's okay with it, or no?
No.
Well, what we do is we have a couple of situations where I've helped parents who have private insurance, but
Yeah.
it's a financial hardship, apply for Katie Beckett services.
Okay.
So, and that helps us
Right.
tremendously. Sometimes it's a daunting process. It's heavy paperwork. It takes a long time. Sometimes you have to reapply. And there are some parents, we can't force them to. They're just like, we can't. It's just, we can't do it.
Oh, okay, so,
But
but
we
we
do,
do,
I really try to work with parents and, help walk them through and get them to the right people and support them with that process. But there is that.
right,
So-
okay, great, thank you.
So, yeah, we can't bill private insurance, but we help them on that process if they need it.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
We have 1 PT and 3 OTs and 7 speech. Is that a speech path for all at one school, or are they bouncing around?
No, so we have multiple speech pathologists, speech and language clinicians. We have some clinicians, we have some pathologists, but 7 of them serve 10 schools. We have 2 of them at Fairview because of our EDD program. And then we have 1 is shared between East Auburn and Washburn. But all of the other schools have and then at the high school and the middle school, they share a pathologist.
And then if I'm going to sort of piggyback on sort of what everybody else has been asking about, you were talking about insurance and everything. For you said that we decide after we do, if we're getting students in that have already been in placement, we hold those placements until we do an individual assessment plan on them?
So we maintain their IEP. So we have a meeting within the first 30 days of them moving into our district where we would meet with that out-of-district placement school, evaluate their need, ask them a lot of questions. The majority of the time, that's the most appropriate placement for them, because they follow the process that they have to. If we have a student, that's sometimes what happens, if they're coming from further up north, they might have been out-of-district placed at a school, and then we have the infrastructure within our BI program or some other things to do that. So then we would have that conversation with the family and set up a transition plan and a time to support, move back in. One of the things that we've also implemented in the time that I've been here is working with an organization called Connections for Kids. So they can provide BHP services within the public school setting. They call it day treatment without walls. So I'd like to get to 10, but they only can provide staffing for 5 due to the staffing shortages. So with our unemployment rate right now, it's very hard to find people that want to do this work. But I mean, I have 12 students on a list that I could serve, and so that's been able to keep kids that have some behavioral challenges, not only in our district but in their home school, which I think is really important. Part of what we, by bringing in the autism programs, we really want to include students that have not been included in our schools and keep them in the least restrictive environment as all possible.
Okay. And I guess the last part of that is, you had said also that under the Medicaid seed,
Yep.
we're responsible for the facilities. I mean, judging from what you're saying right now, there's not a lot of facilities out there that do this. So are you sort of locked into those? I mean, if the facilities don't accept Maine Care, is there a possibility for us just not to utilize those facilities any further?
Yes, we do have a choice in that. All of them do. Because they can bill Maine Care as well on top of that, on top of the tuition. But yes, I think right now I would love more schools to pop up, to be honest. I mean, we're looking high and low. I told Laura, I said we need to start looking for schools that are an hour and a half away. In terms of south and north, we need to look to Saco or beyond, or an hour and a half north, whatever that is.
I guess we get back to the insurance question again. Have you ever had parents that didn't like your placement? I mean, how does that work? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. I think Laura can speak to that.
yes,
Of course,
every parent is always happy with our
pla-
placement.
Placement is an IEP decision, but as the district administrator at the meeting, I have the final sort of, this is what the district is offering. And of course, they have the right to go to due process or challenge that. Most of the time, they are in agreement, but I mean, it goes both ways. Sometimes parents do not want their child going to an out-of-district placement, and a lot of times they don't want them coming back to public school, and I really have to work really hard. If they're ready, if the rest of the IP team says they're ready to go back to public school, it's a lot of relationship building and building trust and visiting, and so there is definitely occasionally times, but we do try to always manage to reach consensus. Might take a little work, but.
Thank you.
The other thing about placements is that for when students go out of district, none of those decisions get made without my approval. And so I'm at every single IEP placement meeting when we make a decision to go out of district. I've already worked with the team. You can ask my team leaders, I grill them, I make sure they have the data, and then Laura and I work hand in glove. We're a team. Once they go out of district, I know she's going to make sure that all the IEPs are exactly the way they need to be, and that she's going to advocate for every single kid that's ready to come back to the district. So it works really well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Do we have any plans or ideas to help curb the rising cost of this every year? It seems like it's escalating, since I've been here anyways. That we should be mindful when we do a budget? I mean, is there something we can do to help that?
So how much time do you have? So, I would love to, there's a two-part answer to that question. So I've analyzed and looked at our out-of-district population. There's a lot of variability in our behavioral programming. So at ALTC, at some of our schools that meet the needs of behavioral students with behavioral needs, I apologize. There's a lot of in and out, kids moving in, kids moving out. There's a lot of volatility there. But where we see the same kids at the same placements every year over and over and over and over again is at Margaret Murphy. Because Margaret Murphy is very good, national reputation for working with kids with autism. If we would want to see that out-of-district number go down, then we would need to greatly invest in creating a program that meets the needs of students with autism. And that would mean a couple things. Identifying a facility that could potentially serve the needs of 30 students. That would mean working with a clinical psychologist either contracting with them or having them on board as an employee, having a full-time BCBA or two, at least one, to work with that population, and then to have social workers to build the infrastructure that we could then build Maine Care, right? So then we could then, because now we're not paying tuition, we're paying salaries, but we can offset that with revenue by billing to Maine Care, just like we do at RETC. And that way, we're always going to have a relationship with Margaret Murphy. It's always important that we have that relationship. But, you know, for me, yes, we can save money in that regard. But for me, we're also including kids that haven't been included in our public schools. They're able to go to the prom. They're able to go be included on our cross-country teams. They can already, but a lot of times their parents don't know that those things are available to them. So we include them in our population. Mike can speak to what's happened in his school at Walton with having the students on this in the autism program be part of the population. It really enriches. I know Celeste can talk about that at Fairview with how it heightens the school. So I think that's a benefit as well. But we would need to invest up front. We would need to invest the manpower, right? The coordination and all of the paperwork. But I believe that I believe we can do it. That's what I would love to see, because our students in the autism program are going to go from kindergarten to first grade to second to third, and then we're going to say, and I'm going to come back to you and say, you know, we need to expand, and I've already asked those parents, be ready in a couple years to come talk to the school board about how this has benefited your child. But I think about that every day. I would love to see that population expand. The growth, that's an area that we currently don't serve, right? We serve, you know, a minimal amount of students, but that's also an area that they're always, and the other thing that I've looked at, that out of that Margaret Murphy Center for Children, out of the 36 kids we have there, we only have like 3 state agency clients. So it's students that live in Auburn, right, that their parents live here, and they're committed to their children and to this community, and then they serve them here, and then they stay there. So that's what we could, in my opinion, that's what we could, if you want to reduce that out of district number, you're still going to invest, but you're going to offset the cost, but you're going to have to invest up front.
So if we send students to Margaret Murphy, we have to pay their tuition, but they get to bill Maine Care?
Correct, and then we have to pay 39% of the billing to Maine Care.
Okay. And Connections for Kids, that is automatically billed to Maine Care, or do we pay because it's a separate entity?
Yep, that's a great question. So Connections for Kids bills Maine Care as well, but the seed gets reduced out of our subsidy.
I just had one note that will hopefully help as you're looking at these reports. You may look at, if you looked at page 19 of the summary and saw the tuition increase of $454,000, but if you look at the summary we just went through, you'd see over $700,000, and that doesn't seem to match up. But this is another example of what we talked about last week of a coding change. We're always making sure our coding is the best that it can be. So when we receive those monthly bills from the private schools, it also includes related services, BHP, OT, PT, and we used to code all of those under tuition, charge them all to tuition. The DOE told us you need to break those out. So we've started this year breaking them out. So you'll see some of those lines had no budget this year and with budget amounts next year. And if you added those ones up, you'd get to that 700,000 plus. So I just wanted to explain that so that as you're looking through, that's not confusing for you.
I wanted to say thank you for printing it the way you did.
You're
Gonna
very
look at-
welcome.
I already harassed them about
Yeah,
that. I was sure
much
to
easier to
get
look
that
at.
in there.
I know we just have a couple minutes left. Any other questions?
I want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. When there's a handout here, you list the schools, the number of teachers per school, and the average caseload. When you talk about average caseload, when I'm looking, for example, at East Auburn, 1.5 teachers, average caseload is 10. You're not saying there are only 10 children there. You are saying that these
Each case
teachers
manager
are
has 10.
Servicing
Yes.
average of 10 children.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Okay.
the other thing too, these numbers don't include students in speech and language. So some of our speech and language pathologists, if it's just speech and language, they case manage those students.
Okay.
So there's actually another 9 special education students at East Auburn, but the special education speech and language pathologist case manages those students. So
Okay.
those numbers are kind of reflected on the lower end of that. But on average, if you take all the kids, these are our caseload numbers across the schools.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm just curious, so on here, it says that supplies and equipment comes out of the special education cost center. Yep. Noticed in cost center 1 that there were some costs related to programs like your RISE programs, your autism programs. I was just wondering, is that going to be changed in coding, or?
So typically what happens at the budget time, so like paper, pencil, scissors, those types of things for special education teachers come out of the regular budget. When it comes to more curriculum materials that are related to the education of students, that comes out of the IDEA grant, comes out of special ed.
Yes.
Yep. Any other questions? Welcome.
If you think of anything over the week, just shoot me an email and we'll make sure we get information for next Wednesday's meeting, okay? All right.
All right, everyone, let's take about 5 minutes to rearrange the room and get ready for regular meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm in for excitement. Yeah. As far as that, like, where's someone? Yeah.
All right, everyone. Good evening. Everyone a moment to sit and settle. I'd like to call this meeting of the March 4th Auburn School Committee meeting to order. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first item, introductions, please. I'm going to start all the way down here on my left.
Anna LeBlanc, student representative. Emma Sampson, student representative.
Adam Hansen, business manager.
Michelle McClellan, Assistant Superintendent.
Brian Carrier, Mayor's representative.
Ken Bush on Ward 5.
Faith Fontaine at large.
Katie Gronin, superintendent.
Karen Matthew, Ward 3.
Pam Hart, Ward 2.
Brian Belknap, Ward 4.
David Simpson at large.
Rose Walker, Ward 1.
All right, everyone, let's begin with communications. We as a school committee have received communications from, and I don't see her here, we have received several communications from an Auburn citizen, Laura Garcia, as well as citizens Alfreda Fornia and Randy DeHetri. Part of what I want to do this evening is, and these emails they're all supporting one another's message, to raise an awareness of current and past practices relative to the decisions and the directions of the Auburn School Department and Auburn School Committee. So please allow me to share some of the points raised. These points I'm going to raise, but they're not all included. So some of the points have been raised. A request to anonymously survey, formally and informally, our past and present teachers. Another request is to really make sure that our students who are not meeting yearly benchmarks receive the interventions that they need, and gather the information around staffing that would be needed to provide those services, to create policies to the appropriate sharing of information when staff attends workshops so that the in-depth knowledge learned and lessons learned reaches all staff, not only those who attended the conferences, and understanding of what data is collected on our students, who has access to that data, and how that data should be used. An awareness that the sense that the Auburn School Department invests in technology, and how much are we investing in the people versus the technology. Questions raised around the history of technology use in our school and how the relationship with Apple came to exist. A reminder of our duty as elected officials to always ask questions in making sure the best interests of Auburn teachers and students is first and foremost in our mind when we're taking into consideration our fiduciary duties. The high school projects, questions on whether or not it was discussed on how the old building could either be renovated or added on to, how much Apple is influencing the design of the new building, and a reminder that what is happening inside the classroom is more important than the building itself. There were some questions around the continuation for the need for the Leverage for Learning Institute with a strong focus on Apple and iPads and apps, and reminders and notices regarding the dropout rate, as well as performance issues at all grade levels. So all in all, these emails do carry a strong message to all of us to fully understand the decisions that have been made in the past and how that should influence decisions for Auburn students, teachers, and taxpayers going forward. And I am reading, so I'm making sure to make all my points. So to these points of information, I would say that as a personal opinion of myself as a committee member, I can and I do appreciate the extensive research that is being done to go into these topics. However, prior to receiving a lot of these emails, we as a school committee have had conversation that we want to come together again, just as we did with our retreat, to establish our visions, our goals, our priorities, and these topics will be given the utmost consideration when we are coming together and forming our goals as a school committee. I do believe it's the collective desire of this school committee to put teachers, students, and taxpayers ahead of everything that we do. So I just want to acknowledge that these communications are being received, heard, understood,
And we're hearing the message loud and clear. Okay, thank you.
I just want to go off of that, that I do appreciate all of the information. Of course, myself, I'm a new board member, and there's a lot of stuff that I don't know. So my response to Laura Garcia's emails was pretty much just in order to get her to help inform us, and kind of all in one place. I thought that was really important that we all get together. So I do appreciate Karen's suggestion of doing something similar to a retreat and inviting her and others.
Certainly could. Yep, we certainly can ask to just sort of have the information, be able to ask the questions, and then take our action steps forward from there. Okay. All right, those are the communications I'm going to share. Anyone else?
I do have a communication from a constituent. She was wondering what the difference between parent engagement and parent involvement. She did some research, and the two of this, she feels that the Auburn School Department consistently uses the word engagement, but really what they are messaging is parent involvement. Parent engagement focuses on parents' strengths and allowing parents to identify issues and solution-focused, utilizing their own skills to enhance and create community. Parent involvement is based on school staff telling parents what the issues and talking at parents about how to solve the issue. Parent numbers stay low when they are asked to be involved. Parent participation increases dramatically when they are empowered, listened to, and allowed opinion. It's a crucial distinguishment in language. She feels that administration needs to stop micromanaging every meeting and allow parents to engage based on their strengths. This community is full of parents who could be utilized based on their skills, interests, and awesome solutions, yet we are not allowed to engage, only silently involved. Food for thought. So this is someone who's just would like, as part of, parent involvement as well as parent engagement.
Let's add that to our conversation when we come together then.
Okay, yep.
Anyone else?
Or it could be an agenda item.
Yeah, it could be an agenda item. Okay. Anyone else this evening? Communications? No? Okay. Moving on. Consent agenda. The consent agenda.
Is that for this agenda?
Yep, so the consent agenda right now is listed straight through this way.
I'd like to make a motion to enter an executive session pursuant to MRSA 4056A for the purpose of discussion of proposed contract renewals of the individuals listed on the agenda of March 4th, 2020.
Oh, okay. So if there is a motion to enter into executive session, it would need a second.
Second.
Okay, and it needs a majority vote, not a unanimous vote. So all those in favor entering into executive session? All those opposed? Motion passed. So we are about to enter into executive session. Executive session for the purpose of, let me just make sure.
It's what Pam just said.
Oh,
Contract renewal of the individuals listed on
listed
the
on the
agenda.
consent agenda. Okay, we will be right back.
We have no way to know. It could take 10 minutes, it could take an hour.
Oh my goodness. This chair?
Those are still on.
I keep trying to, but it's so tight.
Not that you have homework or.
No, I actually have I have a whole poster to do tonight, and I thought that like I'll just get that.
Too bad you didn't bring.
make a motion to come out.
I'll make a motion to come out of executive session.
Second?
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. All right. Next, first item on the tonight's agenda is the approval of tonight's consent agenda, which includes the meeting minutes from January 22nd, February 5th, and the approval of administrative contracts as presented by the superintendent. Can I entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Faith and David. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next item up is public participation. At this time, the school committee invites public to comment on anything that is not on the agenda this evening. There will be opportunity for public discussion when that agenda item comes up. Anyone up for public discussion tonight? Seeing none, moving on. And next item on the agenda, on the agenda is student information. Anna and Emma.
So these past couple weeks have been very big for all of our sports teams. It started off with girls hockey. They lost in the Northern Maines, but they were runners-up. That's always good. The boys basketball just won the state championship, and so that was big. Our unified team just lost to Lewiston by 3, which is a big improvement from the beginning of the season when we lost them by about 20. So that's always good.
Also bowling, Kylie McDonough and Bryce Dumay won the Maine bowling championship, so I thought that was pretty interesting. Unfortunately, boys hockey had a big game last night, and it went into triple overtime against Scarborough, but we lost 3-2. So sad. We had a big fan section though. So. And then lastly, girls skiing was the runner-up state champs also, so it's a big week for sports.
All right, thank you, ladies. Moving on, superintendent's report.
So I'm going to start with the question last week that came up from not last, I've lost track of time. Our last regular meeting around keys with the Edward Little High School gym. So Scott Anier addressed that immediately with a couple keys that he had given to parents at request to use the gym with their student to practice basketball particularly. And so what we are going to do is really talk about how do we create a system or procedure that allows those student athletes and so forth, if they want that extra practice and time, how do we allow that in a way that we can. So Adam has checked with our insurance company, and they recommend you should try doing something, that if a staff member isn't there, but you've given permission to a parent, the parent knows the rules and responsibilities, signs off on the responsibilities, they're issued a key for a certain amount of time, and when they're going to, get it really a procedure in place, and then monitor that, so that if there are things happening that you're like, oh, we had a broken toilet or something, and we're starting to have costs doing that procedure, then we might say, no, we're not going to use a gym. Because our coaches do encourage our students to practice, and so we have to have a balance there. We do well in our sports and our basketball because kids are practicing when they want to practice and have a passion for a sport. So we don't want to not do that. We want to have what's best for kids, and that's our main goal. And so Todd, Scott, Adam, and I talked about putting a procedure together. We'll bring that to you when we have that kind of fleshed out on what will be the form, when will they be able to access, so that we do meet our athletes' needs and our coaches' needs. Because, coach works really hard, and we shouldn't expect a coach in a gym all Saturday night, that's not. But if we have parents that meet our volunteer information and they sign certain things, understanding their responsibilities, then we should also honor that. So we've got to work that out, and we will. And we'll bring that to you when we have something put together. Yes, if you would like.
So I feel like I need to say something because there were, I think, 4 families maybe that had keys, and my husband was one of the parents that had a key, and how this all came about, because I think there's a lot of misconception about how this was, played out, and it's not, because I'm on the school board. But I have a daughter that graduated from EL last year, and she was on the basketball team, and also my daughter's boyfriend. Long story short is that kids were getting into the gym without permission, and my husband got a phone call from the school to see if he would supervise having all members of the basketball teams come and practice on every night. So my husband, for 2 years, went every night to the gym, opened it up for 2 hours, and he sent a text message to everybody on the basketball teams. And he was there 2 hours every night so the kids could be in there, be safe. Kids that weren't supposed to be there, he made sure they weren't allowed in. It was a safe environment for kids to practice. So I just feel like I need to say that. And then there was other members of the basketball families that had keys. And by no means was this, because I was on the school board, or who my husband was, it was just a time for kids to get in the gym, be off the streets, not breaking into the gym, and to practice and make our kids in a safe place, that it was monitored and supervised. So I just felt like I need to say that, because last week I appreciate the parents' concern, but I think there's been a lot of misconception in the community about why people had keys, who had keys, and how those keys were used. And sometimes my child and her boyfriend were the only person that showed up, but everybody was always invited every night on both the boys and girls basketball teams. So I just felt like I need to share that, just so people understand the whole concept, and not just, I didn't have a key for my kid to practice when she wanted to.
Thank you, Faith.
There's a lot of dedication and time that my husband gave
Yeah, definitely.
that I didn't have time to give.
Exactly.
I never went.
Yeah. So we'll put something together and bring it forward to you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. The next one, bringing up Todd Sampson and our athletic trainer for him to introduce. But this is really exciting that we've been recognized by the National Athletic Trainers Association Safe Sports School Award. And so, you got to honor the bright spots and great work, and I know how hard you work getting our athletes ready and taking good care of them and making them ready to perform at their best. So Todd, please introduce and explain.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you, ladies, for recognizing the fantastic winter we've had so far. I think it just goes back to our kids and how hard they work. And if anyone from the MPA is listening, what Faith meant to say is that the gym was open for all athletes, not just basketball players.
Right, exactly.
I fear Mr. Burnham's listening to us right now, so.
Yeah.
So this is one of those great things where when you hire great people, they do great things, and you get to celebrate them. I had little to nothing to do with Edwardsville High School getting this award. We have a great partnership with Select Physical Therapy and Sarah Poirier. So Sarah came on board 2 years ago, and almost kind of like an entry plan, she was getting familiar with the facilities and where is Sherwood Heights and what sport do we play there, and trying to figure out the lay of the land. And very quickly she became concerned in her field of what happens when there's an emergency. What happens when we need an AED at Auburn Middle School? What happens when a fan at Walton Field has a heart attack? All of those things that runs through her mind when we have one of those events. She did all of this work on herself, by herself. I just brought one sample of, she developed this whole program with our athletic training policies and procedures. She developed our emergency action plan, which, because we are at all those different facilities, it's probably a 175-page document. So through this, it was a very easy concept for her to submit all of this work to the National Athletic Trainers Association. And we're one of probably 20 schools in the state that has met the requirements. And some things are recommended and some things are required through this program. And once again, Sarah went above and beyond, and everything that was required and recommended, she put into her plans so that we are one of the first team safe schools.
That's
so
awesome.
She is going to take over and tell you all the specifics about the great things she's done.
So, like Todd was saying, I had a lot of, where is the AED at this location? Is it in the school? Is it in a shed? I had to go around, ask who was in charge of the fields, who knows where the AED is? Are they being checked on every 2 years to see if we can use them properly? So on all of the emergency action plans, we have someone who's in charge of calling 911, someone who's in charge of being, assigning everybody to those jobs, which would be me, Todd, any administrators. It's all laid out black and white in there. So all the coaches have access to that. All of the community, anybody who access Edward Little High School athletics can get right onto that page and read exactly what's going on. Some of the things that were the recommended is the nutrition part, going to our school nurse, her being able to talk about nutrition, a breakfast program at the school, reduced free lunches, being able to refer kids out to who they need to see for nutrition help and that stuff. Part of it was having a room to have athletes come to, which would be my athletic training room in the school, having the proper equipment in there, having it checked up on to see batteries, lifespan, all of that stuff going into it. Having the fields looked at, doing the best that we can to have a safe and proper playing field. I know it's hard with all the rain, especially last year. It was a bunch of divots in the field, but we did our best to try and keep the playing field safe. Making sure that properly fitted equipment is a big thing. I met with the hockey coaches and the football coaches so far of what do we do when somebody is down, and do we take off their equipment? Do we keep their equipment on? And I worked hard with Dr. Kane at Central Maine Orthopedics to decide when are we taking the equipment off. I met with the EMS this summer of how many people do we need that are licensed and trained to take off this equipment, so everybody knows when we get there what exactly we're doing, and it's not a do we do this, do we do that, especially with all the spectators around watching.
Right.
So it's just something that we stayed on top of and we're practicing, and I think that this is really the beginning of what we're going to do.
So once again, I think, I've kind of got a saying that you just hire great people and get out of their way. And I knew Sarah was a little nervous to come up tonight and share with, I think it's hard sometimes to pat yourself on the back, but I've been an AD for almost 20 years, and she's one of the best I've ever worked with. And we're just so fortunate to have her, and so fortunate that you support our agreement with Select Physical Therapy. So thank you, Sarah.
And I would like to say that working with the Auburn community, being fresh out of college, is probably one of the best things that could have happened to me. It's so welcoming. Everybody is open to any questions that I have, helping me every step of the way to get where I need to be to make this successful. So thank you.
We do need a photo op with the superintendent and the principal and the athletic trainer with the banner. So if we could do that before we go on. Awesome, thank you.
Can I just say one thing? As a medical professional, I really, truly appreciate all the work that you've done. We all do, but I really can understand it a little bit more. And knowing, having had to work with traumas, and when they come to the hospital, knowing that they've been taken care of a little bit better, and knowing what people are doing, and I know what it's like to get into a chaos of a trauma, and everybody's around, and no one knows what they're doing, and they're running around like chickens without their heads, And I really, truly appreciate knowing that our school has that safety net and the people that know what they're going to do, so that if it does happen, God forbid, that there are people there that will know what to do, so by the time they get to the hospital, they've already been in safe hands. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I do have to share one story last winter with Sarah, and she was brand new to Auburn, and we were still kind of getting to know each other, and I don't really like the sight of blood. And one of our first girls' hockey games, we had a young lady from the visiting team, actually, a skate blade came across and got her on the arm, and there was blood everywhere. And Sarah, you talked about, there was no chaos with Sarah. She went over, she treated the young lady. The young lady's parents was actually a doctor, and they were thanking her for her work. So I wanted nothing to do with it. I was going in the other direction.
Great.
Hey, Katie.
Thank you.
How did you want that
question.
photo opportunity now?
that'd
Take
be
it
great.
with you?
I got one question.
Brian has a question.
Oh, sure, sorry, Brian.
I'm just curious how, and maybe it's for Todd, maybe it's for you, Katie, how this work, either now or in the future, is going to translate to AMS. As far as the sports program. It sounds like the program's going really well. What we're doing at the high school is great, but how's that going to work? Is that going to translate down to, say, the middle school?
So our contract right now is specifically for the high school kids with Select Physical Therapy, and there are days after school where you can't get anywhere near Sarah's training tables because there's kids in there getting treatment, they need to be taken. But we have had a couple of situations where an Auburn Middle School parent had said, can you take a look at this? Do we need a referral, those kind of things. So the service is available. She's not certainly down there every day, but it is available if needed.
Yeah, and there was a time last year in the spring that I had gotten called to a middle school track meet to help a kid from Brunswick.
Oh, boy. I didn't like that one.
Yeah, so I'm on call to go to any of the middle school things, but of course I have highest impact sports taking priority, and then I'd go from there, and then it will go down, trickle to the middle school. But usually there's a lot of games in the high school area, so I'm always on call for it.
Well, I think Brian's question, do middle schools have athletic trainers? No.
Typically not. I'm sorry.
They're getting there.
Brian, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, I just wanted to make sure
I was just curious, like
okay.
you said,
If we have access to her okay, yeah, good, all right.
Go smile.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
And we'll hang this in the gym.
I would just share how routinely we get emails from visiting schools about the response that they get from Sarah and how appreciative they are.
I've seen her in action. She's amazing. Yeah, I've seen her in action. My son has been the recipient of some of her.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know,
Oh,
a
yeah.
cool head is the best thing.
Yeah. And then when she said they're running down. Thank you. Congratulations again.
Yes, congratulations.
Again. Absolutely.
Well
Thank
deserved.
you. Well deserved. We appreciate your hard work.
And there will be, they have a logo too that can go on their website. So I think we'll work together. I don't know if it's on there now, but we'll work with our tech team to get the logo up.
Okay.
Running.
All right, fabulous. Next item, business, CES net energy billing credit agreement. Business manager Adam Hansen will review purchase agreement prior to the school committee approval.
Okay, so back to our topic of the opportunities with renewable energy for solar with CES. As you know, we spent a lot of time discussing this, and you as a board did vote unanimously to continue our negotiations with CES. So we now are at the point where we need to start entering into contracts with the vendors. So what we had sent out with the agenda was a motion that we need to ask you to approve tonight, as well as a sample contract that was, I think, about 30 pages long. Each vendor will be signing the same contract. The motion was provided to us by our attorney, Aga, who was here talking to you last time. Drummond Woodsum has reviewed the contract language in depth, made suggestions. Everything is to their liking. It does include the non-appropriations clause that they wanted. I don't foresee us ever needing that, but that language is in there to protect us if needed. At this time, we've been sent 18 contracts, and there's probably 6 to 8 more coming. These are all individual contracts with vendors that we will sign. They're all at different rates. I can't get into the specific rates in open session, but I can tell you, Aga had stated in our meeting that she felt we were on track to have good savings as compared to the other option that was out there with CES, and that still holds true at this time. So my full recommendation is that the board vote to move ahead and allow Katie to enter into these contracts. And CES is looking for that to start happening at the end of this week.
Okay, so at this point, we can either entertain a motion that the vote entitled, vote to authorize the purchase of net energy billing credits. We can move into that motion, or if anyone feels the need to enter into executive session, we can make a motion to enter into executive session so that you can see the exact numbers in the contracts.
I just have a quick
Rose?
question. Are you able to tell me again, remind me what the non-appropriations clause was?
Sure. So let's say some point in the future, the board or the council or whoever decides we're not appropriating the money to pay the vendors for the renewable energy, which to me it wouldn't happen because you'd essentially be voting to spend more money on electricity if you did it. But in theory, if that happened, that non-appropriations clause means we would not be responsible to pay those vendors in a year where that happened. So that's the sort of language that is always recommended for school departments, and that is in there. But I don't foresee any realistic scenario where anyone would opt to not appropriate the money to save on utilities.
Any other questions? Okay. So at this time, can I entertain a motion that the vote entitled "Vote to Authorize the Purchase of Net Energy Billing Credits" be adopted in form presented in this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Not opposed? Unanimous approval. Next.
It's all Adam.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
it's all Adam.
thank you.
Adam, we're staying with you. It's the Adam Show. School revolving renovation fund bonds. Adam will recommend to proceed with the school
Yeah.
revolving renovation
So
fund
again, we're
bonds.
coming back to a topic we've mentioned a few times. I was pleased to share with you at our last meeting the late breaking news that the state had approved both projects, which was great news. The state, just to recap, the state is funding these projects and forgiving 61% of the principal, leaving us to pay 39%, and these are interest-free bonds over 10 years. And so in the draft budget, and the piece that you'll be seeing next week, I have budgeted for $46,000 for year one of the 10-year payback, and that covers both projects. So the Franklin project, elevator and bathrooms, we were approved for $1 million. And the Auburn Middle School entry redesign, we were approved for $1.2 million. So the number in the budget represents 39% of those amounts. The total budget for the Franklin project is over $1 million, and we're responsible for anything above that. I think the total was about 1.2 that Harriman Architects had put together. And we do have money that was approved in last year's CIP toward Franklin, and I believe what we have will be more than enough to cover any overage that goes over $1 million. So we are in shape to do that project.
And the city council did I was at city council Monday night for first reading, and first reading went through unanimous. Second reading is March 16th. I will be back there on March 16th.
Yeah, and there is a public hearing that night as well. They have to do that when selling bonds.
Right.
And then our finance committee will be hard at work selecting an architect. RFQs are due tomorrow, and I can tell you we've already received 2. So we'll be discussing that at Finance Committee next week, and then trying to expedite things as much as we can in hopes of getting the middle school project done this summer. And then we'd look at Franklin next summer because it's such a large project. So things are moving, and it's very exciting.
Okay, so at this point, can I entertain a motion to support the school revolving renovation fund bonds for projects at Franklin Alternative School and Auburn Middle School?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
For a second, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. All right, moving on to you again, Adam, the Finance Committee. You'll present the finance report for January 2020.
So,
Brian, do you want me to tackle that, or do you want to jump
well, I
in?
was just going to.
Seems like a long time ago that
I'll
we
let you
met.
have the fun part of it. We'd had a discussion about moving with the revolving funds, going forward with that. It was really just a no-brainer. When we get that kind of deal from the state with no interest and a forgiveness of 61% on the notes, it was just hands down. We wanted to move ahead with it and bring it forward to vote for you folks. Just to let you know that Adam did, as this is a new process for us, he's been answering a lot of questions. So it's not just all the boring bill paying kind of stuff. He does get quite a workout from us from the questions that we're asking him on a consistent basis. So, and with that, I will leave him to him for the boring stuff.
Sure. So, seems like a long time ago, but we did meet. We reviewed the January finance report. There wasn't really much change as far as our key highlights from the past couple of months, which is monitoring the special ed out-of-district tuition that you heard about earlier. The latest projections using the 90% figure of attendance for the rest of the year puts us at about 437,000 over on those tuition lines. I do believe there will be enough offsetting savings in our salary and benefit lines throughout the entire budget to offset that. That 437 has been pretty steady for a couple months, So if that holds, I think we'll be okay. And beyond that, I review all of the different groups of expenditures every month, and everything else is pretty well on track to keep us within budget. So if there are any changes to that, I'll keep the Finance Committee informed, but that's where we're at right now.
Okay, great. Any questions? All right, at this point, can I entertain a motion to approve the Finance Committee for January 2020 as presented?
So moved.
Pam,
Second.
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 Brian, all those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion passes. Adam, I think you're off the hook now. Moving on to policies, first reading. All right, Michelle McClellan will present the following policies.
So the policy subcommittee met, except for Brian, was out of country, but he'll be with us at our next meeting. And we looked at two policies and a procedure that you saw in your packet. So tonight we're going to be looking at first reading and approval for the two policies. And then for the procedure, it's you only need to have one read and approval in your vote. So, Dan, did you want to say anything about our?
No, we just reviewed them, and more to come.
More to come, they're lined up.
Oh, yeah, there's a lineup.
There's a lineup on the tarmac, so we'll be ready. So the first one you see is policy EEAEA, and that's student transportation, employee requirements, training, and responsibilities. And basically, this policy needed to be reviewed, and the changes were very minimal. The subcommittee determined that there were very little change that needed to be made in that. What was changed was the annual exams. Instead of having that right in the summer before, this is just an example for you, right before the school year starts, all of our bus drivers need an annual exam, moving it to a rolling exam, physical exam.
Physical, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's an example. And then the second, the only other substantive was the move from a state records check to a federal clearinghouse records check. So instead of just looking to see if there's what the record looks like for a driver in the state of Maine, we're looking in all states now. Makes sense.
Sense.
And those were the changes on EEAEA.
I have a question.
Sure.
And I apologize, I don't have that policy in front of me, so this might be a redundant question, but as far as bus drivers, do they have, so you have 30 kids on a bus, what if one has an allergy and all of a sudden starts having an anaphylactic reaction? Are they trained in how to protect that child, or, how to use an AED, or like we talked about that, but are they trained in that as well?
Yes, that's part of their training. Generally, they're trained, and then specifically you bring up allergies. They would be, if they have a student with an allergy plan on their bus, they would have training specific to that allergy plan, just like any staff who interfaces with that student. You'll be seeing the allergy policy. I know you contacted me, coming forward, doing some great work with a parent, and then I'm going to be meeting with another family next week, around that. Worked with our school nurses as well as FAIR on that, but that's a separate policy you'll see later.
So not every bus driver is going to be well-versed in how to take care of an anaphylactic reaction, or they will?
Right now, the training, that's the piece that we're
working on?
Yeah,
Okay.
and we have training in our annual training in a general sense.
Okay.
Yes, and so now we're working on what else should happen for any student.
Okay. I mean, what we've told, because I've had this with a driver who had, a student on that they were, being asked to do something that, and we always say, call 911. Your first, when in doubt, just the minute you see a problem, call 911, and then go to your plan, try to comfort, do what you have been trained to do. But if and they're very good about that, they call 911, they have radios so that people are right on it. But yes, if they had a specific student that had something specific, they have to be trained.
Seizures.
And if they're uncomfortable, we always say go 911 and then go into to the training. So if something happens, you at least know help is on the way.
Are there first aid kits on board?
Yes.
There are?
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other conversation or questions? Okay. Michelle, did you, and you went over both the EEA.
So we would make the vote on this
Yeah,
policy
no, I'm saying,
reading.
I'm just wanting to, I'm making sure that your conversation is that you've updated us. Okay, so at this time, can I, yes?
Oh, sorry, I just did have a question. Do those kits have EpiPens on them?
We don't have stock EpiPens.
You don't? Okay, just in case. And what happens if a student gets off the bus with a friend, right, and the friend has an allergy? The bus driver wouldn't necessarily know that, or is it a blanket, all bus drivers are going to have that training?
There is general training now, and we're looking at what best practices are and have evolved over time, and that's where I'm working with FAIR, which is a national allergy-related organization that can advise us.
When you say,
I was going to say, and bus drivers will be trained to administer them, because kids that have severe allergies are probably carrying one themselves, an EpiPen.
If that, right now, what we're saying is that if there's a plan, that any staff, including bus drivers, would be aware of what they needed to do in order to implement that plan, which would include the administration of an EpiPen.
Any student that has that would have a health plan. They're usually 504 students. So they would be talking about their whole day. So they would be saying, if they ride a bus, what's the plan? And we have to inform the bus driver. So they all have health plans that would have that level of need.
Yeah, what I was just mentioning was that if, like, they got off someplace else other than normal, then that bus driver would not be, like,
Right. And they
they're
call
not going to
911
get on the bus and go,
And they
do you
call
have a health
911.
plan?
Right.
Yeah.
They call 911 if anything, yeah.
Yep.
And also, our parents are really good about that.
They are.
They're concerned about, they want their child to be
Absolutely.
safe.
They want their kids safe.
Exactly.
I want my kids safe.
Right.
Yeah.
Faith, do you have a
No,
question or comment?
I think she just.
Okay, Pam, did you have a question or comment?
oh, when you say basic training, do you mean BLS, or is that?
No,
below?
our basic annual training. When I
Okay.
say that, I wasn't referring to that, yeah.
Any other questions or comments? All right, at this time, can we entertain a motion to approve the first reading of the above listed policies as presented?
So moved.
Brian?
Second.
Brian and Brian. Any more discussion? All those in favor? None opposed. Motion passes. Next, procedure endorsement.
Okay, so we have another policy, and that is policy EEAEE, and this around school bus emergencies. This, again, need for review, very minimal. There was no substantive change in this particular policy. Basically, alignment of titles that over the years have changed, and we align those titles with what we currently are using. Otherwise, very minimal, it was a very minimal change in this policy. Questions about the policy?
Comments?
I have a question.
Go ahead. Pam.
So you talked about the allergy issue and how you're working on a policy for that. And this is the first reading of like school bus emergencies and stuff like that. Do you think that once you've established the allergy policy that you're working on, that something in this may change and then we can add an addendum? Because whatever you find with the other policy may lead to changes with this.
It's a good question. So anytime in policy development, if we are making a change in one policy that we suddenly say, okay, how does that influence another policy? Then yeah, we would bring that back.
Okay.
I don't anticipate it because this policy is pretty broad, and I think that the allergy policy will be able to be applied on the bus. I don't anticipate that, but if it did come up, we would do that.
Okay.
It's really about the procedures too, Pam. Sometimes the policy is broad, and then when you see in the procedure we're going to review in a minute, it's much more specific. The allergy procedures, I think, are going to be more specific.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions or comments? All right, at this time, can we entertain a motion to approve the to endorse the above listed procedure as presented?
So moved.
So moved.
Rose, Brian, I'll take you a
Second.
second. All those in favor? None opposed. Motion passes.
So you'll see those two policies again in our next meeting for the second reading. So on to the procedure, the school bus accident procedure, EEA, EE-R. And this had, working with Billy beforehand, before the subcommittee took a look at it, to make sure that what is happening right now in procedure-wise, if there is an accident involving one of our school buses, and does our previous procedure align with it? And there were places that it didn't align, and we needed to add some steps into the procedure. So quite a bit of adding some steps to make it a little bit clearer what we actually do. Again, there was a lot of update of roles, names of transportation director, et cetera, there. You know, there are small additions, so I'll take your questions, but the one thing that we did add, we wanted to be a little clearer on what about an accident that might happen outside of the operational day. And so we added a piece in there about who would be the designee, to be a little bit more specific. So if something happened on one of the athletic trips, that Todd Sampson becomes the designee versus usually it would be Billy. So he would step in and advise that. CLC, the program director of CLC, would step in and be the designee. So that was the only really substantial change to the policy. Questions?
Okay. I would need to, point of clarification right now. We all received, I believe on Monday morning. Oh, sorry, I thought we just did that. No.
No, we asked for questions and now we've reviewed it, so we're ready to take
A motion,
motion.
a motion to endorse the above listed procedure as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Not opposed, motion passes.
Very much.
I'm so sorry, I thought we had done that.
Oh, that's good.
So sorry.
Thinking yes.
There was an addendum added to the agenda that we, at the beginning of our meeting, did not approve the addendum to the agenda regarding an appointment to the ethics panel. So because we did not approve that to be on the agenda, we'll have to postpone that conversation. Okay, all right. Moving on to standing committees. Information from our different committees. Let's start with, we've heard from our finance subcommittee, so I'm just going to kind of go through the list. We've heard policy committee. I believe we've just heard from your work as well. City council update, Mr. Carrier.
Costa Rica was wonderful.
Yeah.
I personally recommend the Arenal area in the mountains of Monteverde.
Okay. Thank you. We feel the salt rubbed into the wound. Thank you so much. Okay. So I take it you were not at the city council meeting then. All right. Curriculum subcommittee. Rose and I will have our first meeting with Shelley coming up on March 25th, so we will have something to report out in a few more weeks. Community Learning Center, Mr. Simpson.
There's a meeting that was scheduled for yesterday that was canceled last Wednesday. The next meeting is April 7th.
Okay. Fabulous. Building committee, Pam and I attended the latest meeting as well as Katie on February 25th. Mark Lee from Harriman Associates was there, showed some updates, and the updates that he showed had more realistic renderings. It looked very real. He also spoke to the Sun Journal article referencing the higher than approved bonding projects currently in process in the Portland area. He cited the difference between their projects and Auburn's project. One point he made was specifically that the bond in Portland occurred 3 years prior to the bidding of the renovations. So in that time, construction costs rose significantly. He referenced the difference between building new versus renovating and adding on to the Edward Little project. When renovating, unexpected costs and problems can occur, which couldn't be foreseen. However, when building new, most costs are accounted for. There is a contingency fund, which is required by the state, and we are above the state's recommendation in that fund right now. However, with all that in mind, it's at the forefront of everyone's minds to exercise fiscal responsibility in the building of this new high school. In the fall, when bids go out, we should have a better understanding of how the plans and the design align with the budget. Okay?
I just want to add a comment, because when you were reading the points that Laura Garcia asked, I can answer real quick about the renovation versus non-renovation. That is the first step in a new high school project. Harriman put together, it's about this big, on do you renovate or do you not renovate? So you can't build new until you prove that, right,
You
what's
can't
most cost effective. So I just want everyone to know, if somebody asks you, that was done right from the beginning. Do you renovate or you go new? And we went new, and the state supported that, and there is, if somebody wants to read it, we have it, so you're welcome to read it. But the answer, if you want to answer Laura on that, that is a yes.
Yeah, okay, wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, DEI Committee, Pam and Dave.
So we met last Thursday, and there had been some conversation about inclusiveness into the DEI. And we've addressed that. There was an article in the paper as well. The Sun Journal came to our meeting and listened. Pretty much Mark Laflemme stayed throughout the whole meeting and listened to us. The conversation, there was a lot of conversation. There was a lot of dialogue. I think if we're going to do this, we're going to have to talk about some hard things. And a lot of that was discussed. Dave and I are going to be meeting with Laura and Virginia, the consultants, this week, just to discuss how we're going to go forward. As I've said in the past, anyone in the community is welcome to come and be part of this discussion. But we're just we want to try to create a mission and just kind of set some things in stone before we keep going forward and create this kind of committee where it is helpful to everybody and all the disenfranchised. Our next meeting is on March 9th from 6 to 7:30. I'm not exactly sure where that'll be, but one of the topics that was brought up last week with a lot of chatter about DEI was the communication and trying to make sure that everyone knows exactly what is going on in the community, because if this is going to work, it has to be a community effort as well as a school effort. And so we've been in discussion about using the Auburn School Department's Facebook page, also using the Auburn School Department's webpage as well, to just try to notify people, because I was told this may not be the best arena in order to notify people, which I take that to heart, because I think we all need to have transparency and clear communication. So that is one of the things we will be doing as far as probably posting the minutes. We're kind of still working on this. We've only had, I believe, 3 meetings with this, so we're still trying to work out the kinks.
Okay. So great, thank you.
And Pam, anything you have that you want to put on the create a page, just send it to us, and we'll make sure Peter makes a page and put stuff on.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, just send stuff to it. No, send stuff to me and we'll
Look at it. Okay, superintendent search is next. Superintendent search, so members of the interview committee that were selected by the school committee members in a workshop last week, which included teachers, admin, community members, and school committee members. So that selection has been made, and yesterday that committee met with Steve Bailey from Maine School Management Association. We met in executive session to guide the next steps in the process and receive training relative to confidentiality. We meet again on March 23rd, but in the meantime, we do want to remind staff, faculty, and community members that we do have 4 public forums coming up. You will receive notification about that. I believe postcards, Michelle, we're going out today. Or yesterday, today?
Yes.
Okay, postcards are going out today. We have forums that are being held. I will state them publicly. March 10th, 4 o'clock at Walton School, 6 o'clock at Auburn Middle School. Forums again on March 12th, 4 o'clock at Park Avenue, 6 o'clock at Edward Little High School. So all of those are open to staff, faculty, community members, taxpayers, students. Did I leave everyone off? Everyone's welcome. Anyone within 04210 zip code.
Yes, please
That
come.
about cover, I think that about covers us. Okay. All right, moving on, technology.
Yeah, I caught up with Peter yesterday real briefly before our MSMA meeting. We also met with Michelle and Sue just to kind of get a starting point because one of the topics at the next parent advisory group is around technology, trying to gain some feedback, both positive and negative, from parents. So I'm excited about that, just to see what's positively happening out there, what's negatively happening out there. Technology itself is a huge topic. We're still trying to understand what that means. Peter kind of told me that there's a survey that goes out every April to teachers and administrators. So I'm excited to see kind of what that looks like, what the outcomes are out of that. The other big thing that we talked about briefly, I asked him to show me his budget so I could kind of get an idea of, I just said, show me where you are, where are there increases, where are there decreases, why are we removing stuff, what's down, just to have an idea going into next week, in case people had questions. I had the background to understand. So we went over that real briefly, and that's really about it. We're still trying to meet on a kind of a check-in every 4 weeks, on a monthly basis, as we kind of feel out where technology is headed.
Thank you, appreciate that. All right, wellness, Faith?
Yeah, they met today. I was unable to attend. I don't know, Michelle, if there's anything. I haven't had a chance to read the email.
Yeah, we met today. We did quite a few things. I think one that might be notable to the school committee would be looking at the assessment that group does about that aligns with your wellness policy. Okay, so we are assessing in each school how they are implementing and their goals around progress with wellness in their buildings, and then we also do that as a district. So we started that last year. We talked about it again this year. They'll be getting ready to do the assessment at the end of the year, and then next year they'll report to you, because in your policy it says that there's a triennial review of wellness in the school. So that was one notable thing. They're going to talk about that again next month. You'll be there.
Okay, great, thank you, Michelle. Audit subcommittee, Brian, Faith?
Nothing yet.
Not yet? Okay.
And at the next meeting, you'll approve the audit.
Okay.
It wasn't on this one, there was a lot on the agenda tonight, so we got to keep in mind that they accept it.
Yep.
The city council accepted it Monday night,
Okay.
so we'll do it.
We'll put it as an agenda.
Yeah, we'll make an agenda item Monday.
Okay, transportation appeals.
Nothing yet.
Right. Share center, I don't know that there's any news. Love that one, Rose.
So there was a little bit of upset. The Share Center was not granted the space at Martell permanently. So Lisa Rodriguez is looking at other options for where to host. She's thinking that we'll have about 2 years in that space. I went to visit her the other day at Martell, and I was in shock, about how much the community has given, how much community members have really stepped up to help. It's fantastic. She actually, as a kind of personal note, I work at Farwell in Lewiston, and she delivered 6 giant boxes of these divider things for my librarian, and she was had the truck, pulled it out, tossed down the gate, the lift gate. It was incredible. She's really, truly amazing and passionate about what she does, so that's wonderful. They also are getting designs for wrapping the truck. So it says Share Center, and she has an amazing idea for a logo. So she's busy trying to find a permanent home and really working hard to get a lot out of what little she has.
Thank
So,
you, Rose.
For sure.
Okay, negotiations.
Nothing yet, but we do have some
Yeah, we
upcoming
have
meetings.
it on schedule.
Coming up. Okay.
Yeah, food service. So I've talked to Karen that they're going to meet because Michelle and Adam will lead with Faith and Brian, and we will need an executive session to have you make sure you give input to that. And so Karen and I have talked about upcoming meeting, going into executive session to go over what is in the contract, what are issues that we may be discussing, and give direction to the team.
Great, thank you. Parent advisory, Rose and Brian.
No, but it's more of a public service announcement. So obviously, the next topic on the Parent Advisory Committee is technology. I'm hopeful that that's not going to scare people away. I know it's one small step in technology. It's such a small piece.
Yeah.
But it really is important to get some people's feedback about what really is going well and what's not. So, so it's more of a PSA, just to make sure that people are attending.
Where is the next meeting and what time?
It is, March 16th, 6 to 7:15, and at Walton in the cafeteria.
Perfect. All righty. All right.
I do want to know, and correct me, parent advisory group, but because the mention about parent involvement, parent engagement, so they did put out a survey. They did ask parents what topics they wanted. It's not the administration driving the topics. It's topics that have come from the parent group for topic ideas. I just wanted to throw that out because that is another bullet point from the email that Pam received. So,
yes.
Brian, you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I'll take the hit for that one. Technology was not a parent advisory recommended topic. That came directly from me.
Okay.
As a result of trying to elicit feedback
Yeah.
from the parent group. So that one was not a recommended topic. Like I said, that one came directly from me. It did not come from the administration. And that, again, was just to try to put the two topics together and have a group of people providing feedback.
But and we know they have put together a group of topics, and I believe you were asking the group to rate what topics they would like to see. So they are trying to get feedback from parents on their topics so that they are driving that agenda.
And the comment about engagement versus involvement is spot on. In terms of that's a conversation that we've been having all year about not only what does it mean, but how can we help make that shift in each of our schools for parents, families really. We've really moved it beyond parents, but families. And how can we have them be true partners engaged in the learning?
Great, thank you, Michelle.
I just wanted to add, thank you, Brian, for putting that topic out there for technology. I definitely think it's something that we want to involve parents in, and as another forum to get that feedback from folks, so about what they want to see and what's good for the students. So thank you.
Great, okay. Moving on, upcoming meetings, so I've listed the community forums. We have a budget workshop, March 11th, 6 o'clock.
I'll bring snacks.
As well as, and then our next regularly scheduled school committee meeting is March 18th. However, we do have a budget workshop before that. So essentially, the next couple of Wednesdays, just assume we'll either have budget workshop and school committee meeting, or simply budget workshop. So make those next few Wednesdays on your calendar. All right, future agenda items.
Karen, no future agenda item, but it was a reminder you told me to remind you in case you forgot.
Yes, please.
Just so that we publicly tell people who are the 4 board members on the superintendent search committee.
I did.
So that way,
I'm sorry.
there's complete transparency.
Yep, absolutely. So Dave and I started on that at the beginning, and then looking at the requests from where people are way back when we did interest of what subcommittees you would like to serve on. Brian Belknap and Faith Fontaine listed it as one of their top. So I asked Brian and Faith to join me on that when we have the 4 board member representation on there. Does that need?
I don't believe you can have 4.
I don't-
That's a quorum, I believe.
Always have to go into session.
Yeah, you have to meet publicly. I'm just saying, when you have 4 members, you're a quorum, so now you're holding
Okay,
a
so now we'll
meeting.
get, so let me talk to Eileen King on that one, because she's the one who, I think recommended 4, 4, 4, and 4 when we originally met with her. So
Well,
me. But you're right, it
everything
a
is,
quorum.
if it's all public, are you
No, the
saying?
interviews will not be public. They will not be
Right, so
public.
let's double check on that.
Yeah, let me
We'll
double
just
check on
double
that
check.
one.
If they can, great. If they
Yep.
can't, I just don't want you to be accused you're having a meeting and.
No, we do not want to. And if that's the case, then we'll go back to the 2 original, Dave Simpson and myself as chair and co-chair. Okay? All right, thank you, Brian, and thank you,
Or you
Kate,
add a
for-
third, draw a name out of a hat and add a third.
We'll arm wrestle for it.
Exactly.
I duke it out. All right, future agenda items, requests for information. None noted right now. If you have any, please either email myself or Katie, or call. No need for executive session, so at this point, we can move to adjourn. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? So moved.
Second.
By Faith, second by Brian. All those in favor? Motion passes. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Everyone.